right. Like I said, today we really have a wonderful and special program, in large part because everyone who's participating today is an FIT alumni. So we don't get that very often, but it's always wonderful to have people come back to the school that they graduated from. And today we're going to do this as a panel presentation. And I want to introduce our panel moderator, Elizabeth Us. She is the senior producer and reporter for Videofashion News, covering the ready-to-wear collections in New York, London, Milan, and Paris. And she regularly interviews the world's top designers, models, and celebrities. Her work has appeared on E! Entertainment Television and the Style Network in the U.S. and internationally. And she'll be speaking today with Sachin and Babi Ahluwalia, fashion designers and textile designers. But I will let her do a little bit more of the introduction. So welcome, Sachin and Babi, and Elizabeth. Thank you for coming.
So here we are today talking to Sachin and Babi Ahluwalia, who are a designing couple who met at FIT and have grown their business, 3 businesses actually, into very successful brands. First, since we're here, let's talk about FIT and how you guys met, if you don't mind telling us a little bit about that story.
We actually met at FIT. I met Babi, I think, the 3rd day that I was here. I think I met her here in orientation. It's funny because I'm coming here after, this was, I think, 1994, so it's been a while. It's about 16 to 18 years ago. Babi and myself, I met with her, we became friends, obviously, coming from India. Babi's family was in the fashion business, so was mine. We had some common ground, and it helped that she was a very pretty girl. So we hit off well, we were very good friends. We just got to know each other better, and we helped out each other in work. The relationship sort of grew from there. And we also had the same ambitions. One of them being we didn't want to go back home to our folks. We wanted to stay here. This was a fabulous city. The excitement of being in the city during that time was incredible. And through the process, Babi sort of became sort of a muse every time I was designing clothes. Late night fittings before submissions in the morning. I'd wake her up at 2 o'clock, take a muslin and throw it on her, and then I'd have to buy her coffee and dinner right after. So the relationship built. So we were fortunate because we were in school. We learned how to work with one another. Babi was doing textiles, I was doing fashion. I think she found it amusing that I was a straight guy from Mumbai, studying fashion. But it kind of worked out okay. We sort of helped each other through the school years, through the four semesters, and that's how we kind of met.
And how did you feel about being woken up at 2 a.m. to do fittings?
I'm so used to this minutia of this business. This is really truly we're second generation in it. My mom's a kidswear designer, or was when I was little, so I understand the energy of panic. I get it, that it needs to fit right. It needs to be just that, and I grew up with this sensibility. So when we became friends, and this chap was like, all right, where do I go for the dress form, and what do I do? I kind of fed off that. So, you're 19, 20, hungry to learn and be part of, all sorts of collaboration, whether it's yours or a peer's or just better your game. So why not? If it is, going downtown to Big Cup for coffee after. So it was fine. It still is fine.
Yeah. So how did you decide that you wanted to start a business together?
I think, necessity is one of the best things that can happen to someone, at least when we were, I think I was 23, and Babi was 22 when we started. We always had this idea. I'd done a project on embroideries in my 3rd semester. And on one of my trips to India, I'd worked with one of my mother's embroidery houses, and I designed a couple of embroideries to add to my portfolio. And I sort of fed off on that. And once we graduated, we obviously we had to make a decision either to go back to India or stay here and try something out. And sometimes, we all have one door open for us at some point in your career. And you really have to take advantage of it. We were very fortunate at that point. We got a meeting with Oscar de la Renta. And it was a one opportunity. We had one meeting with him, and we took advantage of it. And we tried to make the best of it. And I think that just started everything. And obviously, when we started, we didn't know where it was going to take us. But it's those small little opportunities that you get, and you monopolize on it, and then you grow with it.
And with Ankh, is it Ankh?
Ankh, yes, Ankh.
You're still working with designers today, other designers.
Yes.
And how does that help you with your work, or how was that experience?
It's a unique place to be because you really have your ears to the ground on what's brewing. You are ahead of the curve because you know what's sticking. It always sharpens your skill set. It always keeps you looking at the bigger picture. For the moment, we have these 3 brands that we are pushing forward and working towards, and I think it just adds to our edge at the moment.
I think from a creative point of view, I mean, in all the years that I've been doing this, it's about 16 years, I've worked, you get a very unique insight into different design houses. I work with Mr. Valentino, I work with Giorgio Armani, and I work with Oscar and YSL. And if you look at these things, they have such different...
Or for Prabal, for that
Or for Prabal today.
So the spectrum is so vast.
And they have such, and the beauty of our business is we work with the designers themselves because the process of doing these embroideries and these embellishments, it's a very personal thing for everyone because these are usually the things that are either finishing the store, starting the show, and these are the things that are going to go down the red carpet, hopefully at the Oscars. And for them to actually hear where they start from. So they use us as a creative process, as a creative resource. So they give us inspirations, and they literally talk to you, and they tell you exactly where they're coming from. It's not about sitting down and writing notes. It's understanding their language, their sensibility. And then we go back. I usually go back to India, and I work with my artisans, and you try to interpret their sensibility, but based on what they want. And I think when you get different perspectives, it helps you, it enriches you the way you look at design. And you look at it from a business point of view as well.
And how do you divide the work between the 2 of you? Like, does one person do one thing?
To the madness, isn't it?
I wish I could answer that. It's always very difficult. From the design aspect, I go to, today we have a family, we have 2 kids. So Bobby can't travel to our factories as much as I can. So I travel there more. Bobby is more involved in the business aspect of it, the branding aspect of all our businesses.
The why behind it, really. Why is it relevant? Because I think that's such a core important part in design. I mean, he's the maestro behind the sketch, and I'm the very annoying why, and the big macro on things, trying to look at the bigger picture as to, with fantastic stuff and help as to how we're building this out. And what we envision this.
That's equally important in a way where you're kind of giving everyone the sort of the brand philosophy, the brand image. This is what you want to present to the world. And what is that philosophy for you, for your brands, all your brands?
Well, it is really the eclectic elan. It is really to redefine the quintessential basic. It is, America as we've studied here now, and I understand the American wardrobe and I understand the Western, wardrobe. When you take an element, whether it is a jacket or a separate that is, required in our everyday, and you elevate it ever so, and you give it a twist, that point of view is really what I'm bringing to the table. So as in design philosophy, it could be.
Well, I think you have to always. I think what Bobby mentioned is the why. I think before we started each one of our businesses, that was a big question we looked at. I don't think I've been asked this many times, and I've always thought about it. I don't think you can ever follow in anyone's footsteps. I think you have to create your own footsteps. And the best way to go about it is obviously questioning yourself, why are you doing it? What is the need behind it? And I think we look at that aspect very, very closely. And it's always very personal because design is a very personal thing. So once you are satisfied with answering that question, why are you doing it? Because there's a void in the market, or you believe there's a voice that has not been heard that you have to offer. Then you have to, from like anything, you have to look at it from a business point of view. You have to see, does it really validate you to actually doing it? Because we've built 3 businesses over the years, but every single one, whenever we started it, it takes you time to build up. You need a lot of patience, you need a lot of perseverance. So I think before you go through that process, if you can answer that question of why you're doing it, I think that's very essential.
And tell us a little bit about Ankasa, your home furnishings line. And
Yeah, that's a labor of love, isn't it? When we were, of course, still in our roots of A&K and still purveyors of fantastic ornamental design or texture of embroideries of any sort, we kept getting interesting queries from designers for their estates, whether it is, I have the sunroom, can you make this? It was all very nice and gratifying for them to come to us and, utilize our resources. And we were fortunate enough to buy our first apartment. And you saw the very minimalistic, very zen, very clean palette, or you saw the overdone toile upon toile. And it wasn't me. It wasn't the urban gal, I thought. So I said, hold on, why can't we come up with a small collection of decorative pillows, top of the bed? How hard can it be, Sachin? Well, actually, you're right. How hard can it be? So we came up with, a small line of decorative throw pillows, top of the bed, things we could manage within our realm. And we started Ankasa. 6 years ago, 7 years ago.
Okay, there also, you look at your peers. I mean, I looked at what our needs were, what my peers, my friends, we were all very young, we had young families, and we were looking, and when we looked at anything modern, it looked very zen-like, like Babi said, and if it was traditional, we didn't want to be traditional either at that age. So I think we found a void in there. Our approach to home was more the way we approached fashion. I think we tried to be current. We tried to create something fresh and new. We worked with thread embroideries that were traditional, so we took very traditional methods, but we tried to make them more modern and more about what people like us and our friends would actually use. And I think if you can personalize it usually in that manner, it's a little bit easier because then you know who's actually using that house, who's living in that lifestyle.
And what's the process going from inspiration? Like, where do you gather your inspiration, and then what's the process of getting a final product? Like, how is that process?
Inspiration is so vast, really. It really comes from a lifestyle of a well-traveled woman or man. It would come from a fantastical movie. It could come from documents you provide from trips. It could come from as simple as a garden map, or it could come from, so it really transcends through different mediums.
I think, inspirations have come from, usually it comes from our travels. I'd like to say this because it's usually when we're traveling, unfortunately we do travel a fair amount. And there's certain things that you see that sort of inspire you, and it could be from colors. Ankasa has a very definitive color palette. That's where we always start from. And then we just build on it as we go along. And, you need a starting point, but especially in home, you actually build from one space. You keep building on top of it. So it almost works like a tree. You have the roots, and then it starts growing from there. And I think if you look at our first collection that we ever did for Ankasa, everything is an offshoot from where it actually began. So you always, for me, when I look at design, especially at home, it's always where you were last season and how do you make yourself better and bigger, or how do you take that same mold and mold it into something different.
And the process itself of how does that feel to see something that you just thought of kind of exist in somebody else's home?
Oh, that's the most gratifying feeling ever. I mean, of course, to have it endorsed in the right homes and to work with PR companies is also fabulous. But when an everyday client walks in and says, I have Ankasa my home and using it as a verb, which people do now at my Broome Street location, it's truly gratifying, because then they understand and I get their sensibility of how they utilize linen and how I've twisted it around and, gone to town with my ornamental design. So we've kind of stuck to our mantra, whether it is surface texture, whether it may be color, whether it may be something unique. And then they do find you, I feel.
And you made the leap to ready-to-wear 3 years ago. Why branch out into ready-to-wear?
Kind of came back to our roots.
Yeah, I think this is what we started off. I think when we, Babi and myself, right out of school, I think we just graduated a week after we graduated. We actually sat down, and I know it sounds very cliche, but we sat down and we put a business plan together. The business plan was to actually start our own ready-to-wear collection. We happened to, and then we were obviously designing these embroideries, and then we happened to meet with Oscar, and then we met with others, and then we grew that business. And like I say, life happens, and then you got to make a living first.
And then we kind of paid our dues, being the secret trade resource, if you want to call it for the lack of better words. You really learn, and you pay your dues, and you learn how every end of the spectrum through the maestros in the game, and you pick up from there, and then you kind of incorporate it in your own world.
It took us about 10 years, or 10 to 12 years before we felt comfortable enough to venture out and with our own name, with our own label. And again, starting Sachin Babi I give the story, and I think it's so befitting. I was with Babi at a store at Bergdorf, and she tried on this beautiful dress, and she walked out, and she looked stunning, and it was a blue-colored dress. And I said, honey, you have to have it, which I rarely say, but she looks at me and she's like, but I don't have anywhere to go. I said, but that shouldn't be a reason to buy a beautiful dress just because you don't have somewhere else to go. It was a special dress, I got it. And I think that's been our mantra, that you don't have to wait for a Friday night to look special. I think women today would have the need and want to look special every day. Doesn't mean you need to wear a beaded gown every Monday morning, but you want to have things that are specially made, that have more of a thought process, that are unique,
that are artisanal, that really have value to it, that really are thought of, that aren't really the good old. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love tech fabrics, but it's just a little elevated from the everyday humdrum.
And in the beginning, you were saying that Babi was your muse. Mm-hmm. Now, does this still apply when you're working today?
Well, yes. I mean,
in a lot of trouble if you don't know.
I think for a successful partnership, and she's the only partner that I could have ever had, and I'm very fortunate to have her. I think you need the strongest critic as a partner. I think that really, it's the most successful way of building a business when you have that partner who is as critical as they can be. And
coming from the same place, the same voice with as good intent that you do, with hardly any bias, and who understands, to work with creative people, not to say that I'm not, but I think he's highly creative, is you have to understand the creative mind. You really have to, respect it, and you have to get it, and you have to then, nudge it ever so to kind of get the, the true yield out of it as to how you must mold this, whatever we are making, whether it's a pot or a car or a jacket or whatever it is. But to understand the creative mind is so unique, I think, so to really work collaboratively, it's a gift.
And to channel it, because, in design, like, the students here who are in design, you become so focused on one thing, and it's always good to be focused. But then if you have someone, who's able to channel that energy and take it in the right direction, where there is an application to it. I think application is so important.
Yeah.
And I think as designers, it's one of the things that can blow your mind. And trust me, everyone that I work with has the same problem, because, from a creative aspect, it's you immerse yourself completely into it. But if there's no application to it, if someone can't really wear it and make use of it, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter.
So, as a husband and wife team, and you have 3 brands, how do you balance your work and your life relationships?
I won't say anything.
It's a challenge, but you kind of pick your battles, and you know how to switch off, try to, self-discipline. And sometimes you are on a rally and you do fine, and some months, it always peaks, because Fashion Week, when you're working towards a show, then that's priority, and that's what it's good. And then you can, kind of put things on the back burner.
It helps to have distractions like 2 wonderful kids. So.
I'm sure. So, how Fashion Week? You mentioned Fashion Week. Tell us a little bit about the experience of putting on a fashion show during your Fashion Week. That must be.
We started just last year. It was the first time we started. We were doing presentations before, and last year we started doing an action. We did our first runway show. I have to tell you, it was a lot less intimidating than I thought it would be. Maybe it's just you have to pick a good team to work with. We were very fortunate to have a great production team, great stylists, great PR. Everything has to sort of come together. And if you're well prepared, which fortunately we always are, I like to panic in the beginning, not towards the end. I hate panic towards the end. I think nothing good comes out of it.
Yeah.
So I'm always the reverse. And when we started 3 months prior to it, that's when I'm right now for resort. I'm panicking right now. 2 months later, I'm going to be relaxed. So usually, I think for both the shows, on the day of the show, I actually had I think from Style.com, the editor came up to me and she says, "I can't believe it, how calm you look." And I said, I don't have anything to do right now. I'm just waiting for the models to get here, and we dress them and we go through it. It is a lot more exciting, I will say that. I think to see fabric in motion, to see your designs in motion, there's a lot more energy involved in it, and we thoroughly enjoyed it.
From the neckline
Then let's change it so that we have it in time.
to the hemline
You guys like the length of the skirt?
to the bottom line,
Or you can sell it in red.
husband and wife design team Sachin and Babi Ahluwalia must scrutinize every element of their new collection before its debut at Fashion Week. At their Midtown studio, the designers and their creative team discuss every element of the 25 looks that will go down the runway.
We are known for color, for texture.
For unique pieces that are kind of fit into your wardrobe, but with a bit of a twist.
Sachin and Babi met as students at FIT and began their careers doing high-end textiles and embroideries for big-name designers like Oscar de la Renta and Carolina Herrera. But 3 years ago, they decided it was time to fulfill their own creative vision as well, with their own line, Sachin and Babi. Carly Rae Jepsen wore S&B on New Year's Eve, and Beyonce is sporting their studded jacket in this Pepsi ad. But despite the success, in this industry, you're only as good as your last collection.
Last season she was blonde and kind of dusty, and it was a little nomadic spirit. Now it's a little bit more tougher, more sporty, slick. So, yeah, from now on, pressure kicks in. But in this anxiety, I think feeds a lot of your creative juices.
So from sequence to the sequence of looks on the runway, when it comes to Fashion Week, nothing can be left to chance.
From hair to makeup to the color, the nail polish.
Putting on a show for Fashion Week can cost upwards of $100,000, but it's a necessary cost. Because while social media and the internet can help promote your brand, Fashion Week is still the time to shine.
It's a huge platform. I think the amount of visibility that we get, it almost becomes essential.
After their show on February 7th at the Dream Hotel, they give themselves about 5 days, and then they start on the next Sachin and Babi line. Stephanie Simon, New York 1.
In the video, we saw that Beyonce and Carly Rae Jepsen and there's other celebrities that have worn your work. How is that important to your business, for you?
I think from a business point of view, today it definitely boosts things. I think you've got to make a good product. The product's application has to be right. It has to be viable. There has to be reason behind it. But definitely, especially where we're in the contemporary market, and you have clothes selling on a rack it could be on the West Coast or in Texas. It helps to have celebrities endorse your product. I think brand notoriety definitely helps, and it's becoming more so important today because of media, because of the weekly publications that you see out there. I mean, that Carly Rae Jepsen thing, we saw it in, I think, 6 magazines as a result of it. And these things do matter. We've been told by sales that we have buyers coming in and they say, we had people come, they literally tear the pages and they go into the store and they say, we need this dress. So it does boost sales. I think it's more of an immediate gratification from a business aspect.
So we're at FIT, and what would you say is the most important thing that you learned while you were in school here?
It was really, what better to kind of learn design and to apply it 10 blocks up. I mean, literally, it really is. This is like we were catalysts, I felt. You go to school, you finish your papers, you do whatever you need to do, whether it's finishing your portfolio, your sketch, your presentation, and then you pound the pavement and you look for internships and you try to get in and try. So I think it is the application of technical design, and then utilizing it right away. Whether it is I can't afford to go for spring break. All right, so who needs a good intern in for blah blah blah? So and there are things available, the resources. So it was really.
I think, for me, from a creative aspect, being at FIT, being in the city, being 6 blocks away, or maybe 10 blocks away from the fashion district, I think it was invaluable experience for me. I think I learned as a result of being in the city, and FIT, like you all know, is not like other campuses around the world. You're not isolated from the real world. I think being in the city, especially the students that I had, the professors that I had, my first internship was with the mentor who was, in the 4th semester. You have a mentor. I worked with her. I think every aspect of it led to where I am today. And I think, I think it's very at least I feel I was very fortunate to have been here at the time that I was, because I think it gave me all the necessary tools, sort of pushed me towards the path that I took.
And is there any advice that you would give students today that maybe want to follow your path and open their own business, or open their own?
I think, it's always daunting. I mean, you have to understand, Bobby and myself, we were very fortunate. Right off the bat, we did get support from our parents. We had funding.
For the first 18 months.
The first 18 months, we did need funding. It's tough to start your own business. It takes a certain amount of capital to sustain a lifestyle. I mean, our first office was right across the street. You had that Korean deli. We had a loft up there. We both stayed there.
Right across the street.
And our living room was the warehouse, was a design room, was everything. We packed all our boxes. We did everything. I think, it was very fortunate that we were that young. I don't think I could have done it today at my age. You have to be humble. You have to be, you have to have that hunger and the patience to actually go through the process. It does take time. I know we hear there's some young designers who sort of catapulted into stardom because they're enormously talented. There's tremendous amount of talent out there, and you will always find it. I think it's the ones who are patient, who wait and sort of learn. I think keep your ears open and your mouth shut is one of the best things that I learned in the school, was keep listening to what people are saying. And I think that's what I learned from Oscar, from Mrs. Herrera, from
Anybody who stayed in the business 40 years and still is making a decent living out of it, I think that's the key. Is it'll take time. We have to stick with it in this creative business, and you also know how our moods are lifted and they crush because people don't seem to understand the validity of it. But if you believe in what you are doing and you have a humble way of kind of bringing that to your audience, stick with it. That's really the best advice I can give you.
Perseverance.
Yeah, that's great. And what is your vision for the future of your businesses and your company?
Building them out strong and solid, really.
I think for Sachin Babi, we're about a little bit over 3 years into the business. I think building an identity for what your brand stands for is one of the hardest things you can do when you're starting a brand. And I think we have we've started reaching. It takes time for you to understand who your customer is before they identify you. I think we've reached that point. We're very comfortable where we are. And I think it's now taking from where it is and then growing this business. I think, obviously ours is a collection of ready-to-wear. Further on, I think over the years, we will build into accessories and so on and so forth. But I think identifying with your customer. I had someone today who just came and said she was at a cruise and she was Sachin Babi every single day. I think that's really important. I think the more we hear of them who are actually endorsing our product and who are including it into their lifestyle, I think just building on that and going from there is what we'd like to do.
Great. So I don't know how much time is left, but any time? All right. Does anyone have any questions from the audience? Any questions? Anybody? Yes?
So I'll explain to you what ANK Embroideries is. So we are essentially an embroidery house. We own our own factories in India. We started right from scratch and we built it. Everything is privately owned. And what we are is we are a creative resource. So the way the process works is we'll right about now, I'll start meeting with all my clients, and I sit with them and I look at them, their mood boards and their inspiration boards. Based on that, I work with my design team in New York, and then I take it to Mumbai. And I go to my embroidery houses and I sit there and I start developing, what do you call, swatches and documents. That is, for each designer, we create an exclusive collection just for them. That is then within, I think, 2 to 3 weeks. Once that process is done, those documents are taken back to the designers when we sit with them and we show them. Then the designers actually work and put a silhouette to it. That means they will either give us a pattern or they'll make it into a gown or a jacket. They'll determine what the application of that's going to be. In terms of conflict of interest, absolutely, it's a very valid question. This is A&K Embroideries has been our parent company for the longest time. The reason that we are in
you must have integrity.
Yeah.
People really ask us, oh, by mistake, if there is a sort like, you don't need to touch that. That's XYZ's. Like, all right, good. So you put that aside. So things happen where you have, worked on, say, 20 archives and one has slipped away into the other category, but we just call them out and say, don't go there because XYZ is working on them. So it really helps them. And if they trust you and they know that the intent is good and you really have, like I said.
And that business is based completely on personal relationships, on trust.
Yeah.
Like I said, you work with the designer himself, and usually he will give you 3 weeks before the show. He'll give you his finale piece, and that means you literally have to put somebody on a plane, fly them to India, get the piece made, and then the night before the show, the piece is coming in, and they're going to sew it all night long and get it set it down the runway. And these things are tremendously important to them. They trust you, A, that you're going to get the job done, B, that, obviously there's integrity involved in that design, and that stays exclusive from them. So in terms of conflict of interest, we wouldn't be in business if that ever occurred. I don't think they give you second chances there.
Anybody else? Oh, thank you.
Well, you have some of the answers already in the question. Yeah, you're absolutely right. We sell, at the moment, we are happy to distribute our product through a few stores at Saks. Neiman Marcus is both of our brand, and we have key specialty doors within about 80 specialty doors, I think, nationwide. And it is the quintessential platform of bringing in people with eyes in the retail business, forming relationships, having the fashion directors come in, having people come in and look at the collection and, critique it, for the lack of the better.
You do start from trade shows, though. That's a good place to start, if that answers your question. I think if you have a collection, obviously trade shows, you put in a place where there are 4,000 brands. If you've ever been to the Javits or to the Piers where they have the trade shows, we still participate in it, but it's a sea of brands out there. Before you do go into something, you want to know you have a relationship where you can actually talk to someone and get that person's attention to come to you. It might take you a little bit longer if you're doing it just through trade shows. It's a longer process. It's not the wrong way to do it. It just could be a longer process to do it. I'm sorry?
Our
I
first
think Neiman
store
Marcus
was Neiman Marcus, yes.
Neiman Marcus was our first one. Well, I think even when I'm in textiles, like I mentioned, textiles is Ankasa, is a home division of our brand. I think our sensibility has always been towards fashion. That's my schooling. That's what I came to the city for. That's what I relate to. So In a weird sense, I always approach home and textiles the way I approach fashion. I again look at the application. Whenever, even if I'm designing a document, and document by means it's a swatch, I'm looking at it as a skirt. What is it being used for? So whenever I look at textiles, whether I'm doing for home or I'm doing it for fashion, I'm looking at the end product. And that is, and very often when I do submit these to my clients, I submit a sketch also, because then I let them know this is for a skirt, or this is more applicable to a jacket. So I think, maybe because of the years that I've been doing this, my mind is sort of trained to always look at the end product, not just pick something from the middle of the air and from thin air and start creating out of it. I think once, even when I'm given inspirations, if I meet with a designer today and they say, this is, we're focusing towards this object or this painting or this thing, the first thought that comes through my mind is, what is the app, how are you going to use it? Should we be making skirts on tulle? Should these be, slim pencil skirts? The end product is always the first thing that I think of, and then I work, try to marry the inspiration to the end product. I think whenever, and there are times that I fail to do that also, and that's the time that you always see you're going in a particular direction, you're not getting anywhere.
Any other questions?
Depends on the trend, really. If it is relevant and people are feeling a boho chic moment and it is, talking to us as well, then we translate it. So you really look at all cultures, in terms of inspiration. So
Yeah, we've never, this is actually, it's a good question. When I started A&K Embroideries, everyone that did embroideries out of India did sequence work. I don't know if you guys remember, if you look back at your archives in '94, Donna Karen, Calvin Klein, Calvin was obviously an alumni here. Jeffrey Bean, anything that was embroidered was sequenced. This was the year that Donna did this famous Manhattan skyline done in sequence. It was the biggest thing out then. And when we approached it, we started using thread embroideries. And when anybody thought of thread embroideries, they thought of the paisleys and things like that. And what we did was, I had gone to London, I'd gone to the Victoria Albert Museum. I had seen these beautiful these prints there, which were very European, but that could be translated into thread work. So I started with that, and I said, I have to create something different, something new. So being ethnic was never our goal. I think being current and being what was new, what we felt was new, what was more applicable here is what was more of our focus.
Oh goodness.
Oh goodness, no more. That's enough.
No. Yeah, just thinking resort actually at the moment. Yeah.
No, I mean it's fortunate that all the three things have a common thread.
Yeah.
I think it comes to quite crudely putting it, it's value-added goods. We don't create basics. I think there's plenty of people where you guys can go and get your basics. We try to create something special. We try to create things where there's some amount of surface texture or there's some added value to it. And I think that is applicable in our embroideries, in Ankasa, in our home collection, as well as in Sachin Babi. And I think even in this short span that we've been building our own ready-to-wear business, I think the buyers and the consumers are coming to us looking for that thing particularly, because they are looking for that special piece that, and today people are, I think all of you are aspirational, a lot more aspirational than maybe 15 years ago, because I think through media, through these publications, I think you see a lot more, and it's a lot more accessible. Today we have the internet. When we graduated, internet was my gosh, you had to go to the library. You had to spend hours at your FIT library going through old archives. Today you can Google everything. But, And I think it has helped the industry a lot, and it's created new markets as well as a result of it.
Any other questions from you?
Fantastic.
Well,
Thank you.
wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.